Welcome to Life, Work and Dreams. This is Failure. So a few weeks ago I went out for a full day of street photography and I was absolutely buzzing with excitement. I don't get the opportunity to go out for a full day of street anywhere near as much as I used to. And honestly, it was a complete failure. I just didn't have the spark and the compositions just weren't coming together. I was out with my GR and it was messing up autofocus all over the place. And in the end, I gave up. And honestly, it really got to me and I gave myself a few weeks away from going out and taking photographs and really spent some time reflecting on my work and what it means. And in a way, the importance of failure. So I was sat having a beer looking through my failed shots that I've taken over the years and decided to use it as inspiration to talk about failure in street photography. And honestly, it's not all doom and gloom, so stick with me. And I think it's something in street photography that we don't talk often enough about. When I was first starting out life as a street photographer, I'd watch countless hours of YouTube and look at photo books and see page after page of amazing images, only to find that when I went out and started, that this was far from the process of day-to-day street photography. I began to understand the phrase I'd heard over and over about putting in the work. I try really hard to take photographs in the moment on instinct and worry about whether they're a great image back at the computer or iPad later on. But on reflecting on this idea of failure, I've split out into chapters, different ways I feel like I fail within my street photography, so I can better learn from them and put them into practice out on the street, not talking to the camera. I think this is something I first experienced a lot when I started out. I was so excited to be doing street photography with my new camera and take lots of photographs of literally anything. And a lot of them were really terrible and I'd get really frustrated, but I hadn't given myself time to learn the tool I was using. And I think this is something that can be really off-putting for lots of new photographers, and it certainly was for me. I wasn't in tune with the camera and I didn't speak its language. I'd be hurried in trying to take sneaky shots, starting here, there and everywhere, without looking at how the settings of my camera would affect this. Because at the end of the day, it's just a tool that you need to talk to get it to capture the photographs you want to make. And I think giving yourself time to practice and figure out your camera to the point where you don't even really need to think about it gives you the opportunity to just act more instinctively and get a much better success rate out doing street photography. Frustration and mood. This one is a big one for me and something I struggle with a lot. Sometimes I'm just not in the right mindset or mood to be out taking photographs, and it can really affect my output. And honestly, I can even be on the bus on my way into the city and already make my mind up that my photographs are going to be rubbish. Or I'm almost talking myself out of doing it. And I think one big thing I found with this is finding a way to get yourself out of this rut. And maybe it's just trying switching up what you're doing. Try listening to music when you're out shooting if you don't do that usually. Or try pushing through. Like for me, often I can be having a bad morning of street and nothing's working or coming together. And all it takes is one half decent image and I'm back in the zone. And that high or rush will usually see me through the next few hours. But I think the main thing with this is it's important to not give up. A good example of this is a few months ago, I had this absolutely terrible day of street photography. Like every single picture I took was an absolute disaster. And I just decided to get the bus home defeated. And the bus was absolutely packed with people. And I was head down reviewing all of these terrible pictures I'd taken. And then I just looked up to this sea of people looking back at me, looking so fed up with their day. And it was almost like my mood was being reflected back at me through all the people on the bus. So I quickly got my camera and clicked the shutter. And this frame is one of my favourite photographs I've taken this year. And maybe it was just that I needed to change my surroundings to find new inspiration. But I'm now so happy that I had the rubbish day of street photography to put me in the right place and time and be willing to see what was right in front of me. And this works well into my next chapter, the lack of awareness of your surroundings. And I think this is something that maybe is less of a failure, but something I've learned over time. In my early days as a street photographer, I just don't think I was as cognizant of the world around me. I would be so focused on taking a photograph of literally anything or anyone that I wasn't in tune with the simple moments or wonderful serendipity the street can give. The world is so full of so many happy accidents, or moments of pure joy that are so easy to overlook. Looking back over some of my favourite work, it's training my brain to see those small fleeting moments. And I think this is one of the most beautiful things about street photography, its ability to open your eyes to the world around you. Fear. This can manifest itself in so many different ways. I get a lot of messages asking me how do I dare get so close to a subject when out doing street photography? And honestly, when I first started, I wouldn't have ever dreamed of taking this kind of image. But it goes back to the phrase that I talked about earlier in the video about putting in the work. The more time you're out on the street, the more times you will fail, but also the closer and more comfortable you will become. And for me, it was all about me being comfortable with me being out with the camera, taking photographs of people. And honestly, in the whole time I've done street photography, I've never really had that much of a bad encounter. Thinking about it, for the subject, it's only a fraction of a second that the photograph's taking. But for us as the street photographer, there's the psyching yourself up to go take the shot, the pressure of pressing the shutter, and then the whole kind of exhilaration after of, did I get the shot? And I think this is something that just develops over time. And finally, time. And this breaks down into so many different chapters, but for me there feels like such an urgency to take photographs and then share them with the world before moving on to the next thing. But often images need time to reveal themselves to you and can be missed in the sea of never-ending street photographs. I think giving yourself time to reflect on old work and see things that you haven't can turn something into a photograph you really love. For instance, my Tuesday project, I'd taken images over a whole year and never looked at them. And in reviewing them, disconnected from the time of shooting, really helped me to focus on them in a really different way and see some images in a whole new light. I've been struggling with failure a lot recently, and I made this video as much for myself as I did for anyone else. But I think it's important to realise that failure in street photography isn't a bad thing, and it's just as important to reflect on our failure as much as it is the good, to understand and how you can grow as a street photographer. Because on reflection and going through this process, I've realised failure is where the great photographs live. And I thought I'd celebrate this and print some of my work big and hang it in the studio as a reminder that a terrible day of street photography led me here. Thank you.